Augustine chapter 21. Ma Taffy is not one for favorites, but if you press her, she might admit the difficult truth that of the three nieces she has raised, Gina is the one she loves the most. But this truth is not an easy one to face, because if she does, then Ma Taffy will have to own up to an even harder truth, that of the three girls, Gina has been the greatest disappointment. Ma Taffy had not expected great things of the other two. This was no slight on them. It was just Ma Taffy's pragmatic understanding of the world. She was a poor woman raising poor children in a poor place. What more hope could she have for them but that they survive? Every morning she hoped that they would be so blessed as to avoid bullets and knives and the various schemes of Babylon. She also hoped that when they were older, they would not be too acquainted with hunger, and that, in whatever way, they might also know a portion of love. That was enough to hope for. That was plenty. And if, on top of surviving, the girls managed to finish high school, or go to community college, or university even, it would have been brata, an extra measure given unto them. If such things happened, then praise Jah. But if such brata did not happen, then so what? She couldn't really complain because she hadn't even hoped for it. Ma Taffy's first two girls did survive. They had grown up to be honest women with heads firmly attached to their bodies, and that was enough for Ma Taffy. But with Gina, things had always been different. This was the child with brains, the kind of brains you could use to do great things. It was Gina who had helped Ma Taffy through the early months of her blindness, and without even knowing what she was doing. Ma Taffy owed the child a debt. In the aftermath of the collapse of Ma Taffy's roof, the people of Augustine had been helpful. The men who worked in construction had pinched a half bag of cement here and a half bag of cement there, along with sheets of zinc, and they had put the roof back up in record time. Ma Taffy mumbled thanks to whoever was in earshot, trying to be grateful, but then went straight back into that room and stayed there for weeks. She was bitter. People came to visit her, but she would not say much. People arrived with food, but she hardly ate. Blindness to Ma Taffy felt like the beginnings of death, and so she was waiting for the whole thing to consume her. It was Gina who changed things. Whenever the little girl sat there at the side of the bed, silent, observing her aunt, Ma Taffy would feel a flutter of sensation traveling up her spine and around her face. She realized that what she was feeling was a child's mind at work, and it astonished her. So one day she tried an experiment. She formed in her mind the thought, "Gina, go and get me a cup of tea." "What kind of tea you want, Auntie?" Gina asked. "Sarah, see." Ma Taffy answered aloud. Gina rose from her seat and went into the kitchen to prepare the tea. "Well, look at that," Ma Taffy whispered. Without knowing it, Gina had taught her aunt how to be silent and how to reach into the minds of others. Ma Taffy now knew how to discern Gina's presence, and so she taught herself how to discern the presence of others. Soon she would teach herself how to discern smells and sounds, even from a distance. She was becoming a woman who could hear and taste and smell what other people could not. It was therefore not the simple fact of blindness that made her so alert, so perceptive. It was her relationship with Gina. So Ma Taffy began to hope, not just that her youngest niece would survive, but that she would thrive as well. She hoped that this little girl would be the one to know and understand Babylon from the inside out, and that one day she would be able to rise over it all. "But why spend time with these lessons, Auntie?" Gina would complain some evenings, bored with school and trying to use Ma Taffy's own logic against her. "All of this is just white man knowledge." True, Matafi would agree. That is true. But if you learn white man knowledge even better than the white man, then one day you will know how to use the tools of Babylon against Babylon. Matafi began to whisper things to Gina, things she had never told the other two girls, things that only uptown people ever said to their children. You can be anything you want to be, girl, Matafi said, so long as you put your mind to it. You can accomplish it. With all her heart, Matafi believed this. She even hoped for it. But then one day, Gina upped and got pregnant. And for the whole 9 months of the pregnancy, Matafi did not know. On the night when Kia was to be born, Gina woke up from a nightmare. At first, she thought it was her own screaming that had pulled her out of sleep. But when she opened her eyes, it seemed to be one of those perfectly still nights in August town. The sweet smell of crushed bougainvillea wafted up from between her legs. She also felt a spreading wetness, and then a more urgent feeling. Her stomach seemed to be pulling into itself violently. But in the next moment, it felt as if it was exploding. She screamed this time, realizing it was this strange violence happening inside her own body, and not the nightmare that had caused her to wake up. Matafi was standing in the doorway. Gina, what happened? Gina could hardly see the old woman. Don't turn on the lights, Auntie. Just leave them off, she said through gritted teeth. I ask you what happened, Gina? Nothing, Auntie. Go to your bed and leave the light off. What a turning the goddamn lights for? Gina's scream cut off the old woman as another contraction tore through the 15-year-old's body. To rasclad, Matafi gasped. Is a baby, Auntie. It coming now. Stay calm, child. I go and get some water. Yes, Aunt will. Just stay calm. The old woman began to shuffle out to get the items, but Gina could hear her walking into things. The table, the wall, the chair. Matafi walking into things? How strange. And it was in this way that the girl knew she was still asleep, that she had only woken from one dream into another. She opened her eyes a second time, this time finally waking up. She knew that the labor pains were real though. Another contraction came and she stuffed a pillow into her mouth while yanking off her panties. She was determined not to make a sound. She was going to do this by herself. She got up out of the bed and walked over to the window. She held onto the burglar bars and stooped. She let the pain of the contractions help her to push. She heard something plop onto the ground, and the green-brown smell of her feces reached up to her nostrils, and it was the shame of this much more than the pain that made tears wash her face. She cried silently as she pushed. It felt as if this baby was going to tear her in two. She felt the lips of her lower parts opening wide as if they too wanted to scream. She squeezed the burglar bars even more tightly till it seemed they were cutting into her hands. Her small knees were trembling. You could not distinguish her tears from the sweat that now washed her entire body. She took quick and shallow breaths and tried to remember everything she had read beforehand about this moment. She knew the baby would come first, and then the placenta, and then she would have to use string and tie the umbilical cord 4 inches away from the child. Gina gritted her teeth and pushed the baby all the way out. She crumpled to the floor like a disused rag, lying there in the mess of water, blood, and feces, and in the umbilical tangle of her just-born baby. In her own bedroom, Matafi had just woken up. The smell of crushed bougainvillea was in her nostrils. That is a smell like a woman's water breaking. She thought this without effort, almost in a dream state. and then turned on her pillow to go back to sleep. She began to drift off again, but was dimly aware of Gina's feet moving about the small house. She jolted up. Now fully awake, her mind began replaying things she had not noticed in the past few months. Things she had found strange, but had dismissed without trying to make too much sense of them. She sniffed the air and smelled the bougainvillea again. She listened to the soft footsteps of Gina. She thought about the past few months, and a sudden knowing lodged itself under Ma Taffy's ribcage. She got out of her bed and ambled quickly towards the bathroom. She was muttering the whole way, "Wicked blood-clad whore of Babylon! Dirty Jezebel gal! Whore!" She got to the bathroom where Gina was now kneeling in front of the toilet. Ma Taffy's voice came out, thin and sharp as a whip. "It's a good thing me can't even see you, 'cause you is a dirty and wicked whore. You is a little agent of Babylon. Fire upon you, child!" The girl began to tremble as she held the tiny baby over the toilet bowl like an offering. Ma Taffy continued, "It could have never made it raise you from your small. No, sir, it could have never. I don't know you at all no more, Gina. What could really make you go think of doing such a thingy? To kill off your own little baby? That is murder. That is wickedness." A sound of snot and tears came from the girl's mouth. "Oh, you know, Auntie?" Ma Taffy was breathing heavily. "Just 'cause me whole and blind don't mean you should take me for a fool. All these months me never understand what did happen to you. Why you stop go to school, and the way you just close off from me." Ma Taffy paused. An unexpected bubble of emotion had risen up into her throat. "You never do that before, you know. You never close off yourself from me. Not like that. I did think maybe you'd just reach a age where you was really becoming your own woman. And I said to myself, maybe you just need the space to become what you was becoming. That's what I say. I say, maybe you need that space." Ma Taffy eased herself down to the linoleum floor, and her yellow eye gleamed in the silver of white light that came into the house from the street lamp outside. Her eye was wet. "Sometimes I think I know you better than the other two. I don't see you, but it's like I learn now to aim. What is the word?" "Perceive," Gina offered, as she often did, still helping to complete her aunt's sentences. "Yes, that is the word. I learn how to perceive you. But I realize I can't do it no more. I come into a room and I almost walk right into you, 'cause I don't know you is even there. But is you, Gina? Is you was the one shutting yourself off from me? Like you decide to close a door between me and you. Like you decide to be invisible. But is a evil silence holding between us, girl. And this thing you're thinking of doing, this is even more evilous." Ma Taffy stayed there for a while. No more words passed between the two. They perceived each other in the dark, Gina opening the door she had closed. "I'm sorry," she said to Ma Taffy from within herself. "Thank you," Ma Taffy said from within herself. The old woman stood up at last and returned to her bedroom. She never went back to sleep, though. Instead, she listened to the sound of the baby that had now started crying, the sound of Gina's feet as she walked out from the bathroom, the sound of Gina's voice as she cooed the baby to sleep. Chapter 22. The day broke, and Ma Taffy lifted the as-yet-to-be-named boy-child and surveyed him as carefully as a cartographer might survey a new piece of land. She ran her fingers over his tiny toes, his fat legs, his little penis. She felt his arms and pulled each of his 10 fingers. She did her examination with great care, learning the shape of the boy and making sure everything was as it should be. Then her fingers found his face. The baby opened his mouth and gurgled. It was a pleasing sound. Matafi smiled as she felt his lips, his eyes, his nose, the shape of his forehead, and his cheekbones. She stopped short. She ran her fingers over his face again, and then again. She didn't know why this new revelation surprised her even more than the fact that Gina had been pregnant all along. Gina was observing this examination. At first, she turned her own face to the window as if ashamed. But then she turned back and pulled the boy out of the old woman's arms. "I'm going to call him Kaya," Gina said. The words came out with more obstinacy than she had intended. But she was answering a question Matafi had not yet thought to ask. Or rather, she was refusing her permission to ask it. For it was true what Matafi had said the night before. The girl was becoming a woman and needed a space for her own secrets. She had reopened the door between herself and her aunt, but only partially. "Kaya?" Matafi asked. "Yes, Kaya," Gina said with finality. Matafi bit her lips. Kaya, Zulu for home, though Matafi did not know this. Instead, she knew of Kaya, a weed, ganja, or else Kaya as hair. Thick, nappy African hair, a kind of hair that this boy certainly would not have. It was a strong African-sounding name, a Rasta name. Matafi began to think about names, and the fact that she had changed her own from Irene to Irie. She had given herself her own Rasta name. She disliked that so many of her people walked around with names like Lisa or Robert or George, names that tried to diminish the greatest part of who they were, of their history, names that weren't even names but erasures. And maybe this was her hesitation with this name, Kaya, that it, too, seemed to be an erasure. It was trying to rub out part of the child. And it did matter, Matafi wondered, that the part of him that was being erased by his name was the part that could make life easier for the boy. Or maybe she felt that a Rasta name was the kind of name a man or woman had to find on their own. You couldn't just be born with it. You had to grow into it. It could not be passed down so simply from parent to child. Matafi felt a complicated thing inside her, but she did not have the words to unravel or make sense of that thing. And on this occasion, she did not know how to ask Gina for the words she was seeking. If they had been able to talk about it, if Gina hadn't closed the door on these questions, she would have explained to Matafi that it wasn't the child's half-whiteness she was trying to diminish. Not exactly. Rather, it was a specific man, a boy really, that she was trying to forget. One of Matafi's most constant bits of advice to her girls was this: "Make a fool kiss you, that is one thing. But to make a kiss fool you, that is even worse. Don't make no man turn you into no fool." Sometimes she replaced the word kiss with something even cruder. Gina had taken this advice seriously and was cautious around boys. She wasn't prudish, for this was not Matafi's intention. She kissed boys when she felt like it, and twice she had made a boy touch her in her private place. But there was a line that had to do with her own mind and her own comfort, and no one was able to push past that. As well, Gina believed Matafi's words, that she could be anything she wanted to be, and she was determined to be someone who would rise up out of Augustown. The boys from the community were therefore unattractive to her. Sometimes they accused her. "You think you're better than we, don't it? Bright girl from the ghetto. And Gina would nod. I don't think I'm better than you. I know it. The Augustone boys had no chance, and they gave up trying. But the grown men were more determined. There was something about a schoolgirl in her uniform that made them act all silly. Gina had ripened to a perfect age, and each man felt he wanted to be the one to pick her. When she walked to school, they would whistle and psst and offer her all manner of things, clothes, money, trips. On school mornings, Gina was therefore never surprised when a car would slow down behind her and then pull up alongside her, a big man with his face outside the window, his tongue outside his mouth, sometimes grabbing for her. She was used to all this. So when she heard the car slow down behind her on that fateful morning and then pull up alongside, she took a deep breath, and without even turning her head, she shouted, Why you don't go home and fuck your blasted wife and stop by the school picnic? You ras pervert you. She spun around then, ready to see the man's stunned face and take whatever abuse he was going to mete out. She was taken aback to see a boy, hardly older than she was, behind the wheel of a blue Honda, and he was smiling at her. She was not prepared for such a thing. This white boy was smiling at her. I don't have wife for a picnic, he said, half laughing. But you look like you rushing. You want a lift? She stammered. It was embarrassment more than anything else that made her get into the car. The boy examined her uniform, the maroon crest on the breast of a khaki tunic. I guess you're going to Mona High, he asked. It was a long walk in the sun, but barely a 3-minute drive. Gina nodded uselessly. She knew how to resist the boys of Augustone, and also the men, but this boy seemed to come from a world far, far away. They said little on that first short car ride, but the next morning his car pulled up behind her again, and the morning after that. And after a short time, Gina would just wait for him at a regular spot, under the peewee tree, its yellow blossoms falling into her hair. His name was Matthew, and over the next week she learned that he had just finished high school, Campion College, and was taking a year out before going off to university abroad. He was helping his parents for the year, doing odd jobs for them. So every morning he dropped his mother at work in Augustone and then borrowed her car for the day to do the errands he had been assigned. They talked about little things. Matthew about his errands, Gina about the classes she had to take. Sometimes Matthew quizzed Gina on the subjects he was studying. He did not mean to be patronizing, but realized he had been whenever he was taken aback by the fluency of her answers. Sometimes Gina explained concepts to him that he had never fully understood himself, and he began to look at her differently. You know, he said one morning, you're just as bright as any of the kids at Campion. And why would that surprise you? She snapped, for she understood more than he did. This boy could only make sense of her if he compared her to the people from his world. But she was not from his world, and she did not want him to forget that. You feel that it's only uptown people that's supposed to be smart? It's not that, Matthew insisted. I was just wondering how you ended up at Mona High. Come on, Gina, be honest. It's not a good school. You could have gone anywhere. Well, maybe I don't have Campion money. It's not about money, he shot back. To some extent, he was right. In the island's grade 6 common entrance exams, students could pick whichever high school they wanted to go to. School fees were the same across the island, so as long as a child got the grades, they could get into the school of their choice. Few people would have put down Mona High as their first choice. It was the kind of school that accepted the remainder of students, those who didn't get the grades to attend the schools they had actually picked. I didn't think much about what school I wanted to go to, Gina confessed. My two cousins, they're like my sisters. They went to Mona High, so that's where I chose. Well, that's a pity. Excuse me? I'm sorry, but it is. And why exactly is that? Because I don't go to no snobbish uptown school? No, because I don't know. Matthew paused. He knew he was putting his foot right back into his mouth, but he shrugged and risked it. Maybe you could have achieved more if you had gone to another school. Achieved more? She was still incredulous. No, not that, but had more opportunities. But Matthew, if I get the same grades at Mona as you did get at Campion, then what difference it make? Yes, I suppose. Matthew conceded and said no more. But even then, a big and uncomfortable truth started to sit between them. This was Jamaica after all. He knew it and she knew it. Where you were born mattered. Where you lived mattered even more. And if you were born in the wrong place and also lived in the wrong place, then where you went to school mattered as much as water matters to a thirsty man in the desert. It made a difference. But they ignored this thing that was sitting between them, this incredible distance between their two worlds. It made no sense in the small confines of that blue Honda. It made no sense in relation to how close they were beginning to feel towards each other, and how much closer they wanted to get. The daily drive from the Pewee Trees to Mona High School went on for weeks, and something like love began to grow in that car. End of chapter 22.